Pretty excited to be doing this for the first time. We've been talking about this for years. And so this is the first time we're actually going to be tracking some election results. And with a particular focus on independent seats, teal seats, and green seats. So a little bit about me. My name's Dinesh Matthew. I've been involved in campaigns for a couple of decades now. I'm a former national and state campaign manager for the Greens and local campaign manager, and I campaign managed the Greens when they won the Prahran for the first time in 2014, and then obviously went to New South Wales, and we had a hand in Ballina and worked in Queensland as well, just to help those guys out in those first campaign years. And obviously we're seeing some amazing results coming from that area. So today we're streaming from my other channel because we've had a little bit of a problem with our Chef Talk channel and streaming straight from there. So I'm going through my cooking channel. So welcome, and feel free to subscribe to that too. We're waiting on a couple of psephologists to join us, and we'll have Charles Richardson here and Gurm Sekon, and Alex Batal will join me at some point, and we're waiting on some others to confirm whether they'll turn up later as well. We're monitoring our phones, and we'll probably get some calls in from some other psephologists from around Australia, hopefully as well, so we get a better understanding of what's going on in New South Wales, Perth, WA, and Tasmania as well. There's a couple of seats of interest for us there. Obviously none of the results have come in. What's happening right now, for those of you who don't know, is that the ballot boxes in the election centres have closed for voting at 6 o'clock. So we're at 6:18 or something like that now, 6:21. And they're basically checking to see, basically opening the boxes up and getting the votes together, getting ready to count. Scrutineers are in just about every single polling booth at the moment, and obviously in those key seats there'll be scrutineers from all the parties that have a chance of winning, essentially. So in Greens versus Labor and Liberal seats, we're actually coming to you live from the seat of McNamara. There'll be Greens, Labor and Liberal scrutineers in just about every single polling booth. And in the teal seats like Goldstein, Kooyong, and a whole host of seats up in New South Wales, there'll obviously be teals, etc. There's a specific things that we look for as psephologists in those seats, and not just looking at the primary votes. So most people are looking at the people who vote 1 for Labor, Green, Independent, Liberal. What we are looking at is the votes from those minor parties. So even if, say, One Nation is running, they seem to be running everywhere at the moment, we as psephologists want to know where those preferences are going. So even though we think that One Nation voters might necessarily vote for the Liberals second, there is a chance that they won't. So we just want to find out what the trend is, whether there is maybe a 50%, 40%, 20% leakage to another party. That's where it becomes interesting. So that's what scrutiny is generally looking out for. So we can actually gauge where those preferences are going. So we can work out, by inputting it into our models, which way we think that seat is going to swing. So that's what's happening right now. It'll probably take about another 30 minutes maybe for us to start seeing the first few results coming in. And those are going to be from the smallest booths. So the first results that'll come in will be from regional areas with very, very tiny booths. So we're probably not going to get much results out of that. Maybe there are seats like Wannon up in Victoria, in regional Victoria, which will be interesting because there'll be some smaller booths coming out of that. That'll be really interesting to see where those votes are swinging, whether the independent up there, Alex Dyson, I think, whether he has a chance of actually winning that seat. We'll be talking through a lot of those scenarios when we get our other psephologists in as well, but I just wanted to give you a little update of what's going on right now and why we don't see results for a little bit of time. Once the Electoral Commission start looking at the first preference votes, and once it's double checked, so they will check it again, and they will publish the first preference votes. Then there'll be a wait before they do the two-party preferred vote. Now, with this election being so interesting, with just about every poll showing that there's a record number of voters voting for minor parties and independents, up to about 31% is the last poll that I saw. We are at this critical juncture in Australian politics where independents and minor parties and third parties are going to start having a bigger say. So what the Electoral Commission does is they choose before the election who they think is going to come first and second in most of these seats. It's kind of hard to do that right now because in a lot of seats, there is a potential for a Greens to come third or an independent to come third and then get some preferences from other minor parties and independents and then come to second. So in a lot of cases, the two-party preferred vote we're going to get today for a lot of these seats are actually going to be wrong, because when they actually have to do the total count, what they're going to find is that that second candidate in the two-party preferred count is going to be someone else. So it will have to be a redistribution of preferences. So that's when we will see some interesting results. So we're not going to get the full picture tonight in terms of most of these seats with independents and minor parties, because the Electoral Commission might have picked the wrong two candidates. That happens sometimes. They won't be able to switch midstream because there are 35 to 40 booths in just about most of the metro electorates, so they won't be able to switch like that. So they will go as they've planned, and next week, when the votes become a little bit clearer and the numbers become a bit clearer, that's when they will switch to what is the real count. So at that point, we're going to get a better result. So what we're going to try and do today is get a better understanding without looking at the two-party preferred vote that the Electoral Commission is going to do. We're going to try and analyze and see whether we can actually get to the most plausible result that we're going to see today. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the polling that we've been seeing, and I'm just going to go and put up some interesting polling results that I've been seeing, and our friends at Poll Bludger, who do an amazing, amazing job. So William Bao, who is a psephologist, does an amazing blog, and if you get a chance, you should go and have a look at that, subscribe, and you will see some pretty interesting polling results. He covers all the polls that come out. And let me see if I can get that particular one up. Yeah, so these are the final polls that came out. Roy Morgan, YouGov, and Newspoll, Demos AU, which I think is it. I haven't heard of that one. This is where it gets pretty interesting, and you need to break it down into state by state. So generic polling across Australia is not going to work. The votes are going to differ way too much state by state. And in some states, some issues are pertinent and some issues aren't. So I'd be interested in, for example, very, very hard to poll state in Tasmania, be interested in a couple of seats there and to see if there was a big issue about salmon farming there, whether that's starting to hit in the electorate of Franklin, for example, and whether the independent that's there, who is also endorsed by Andrew Wilkie, another independent in Tasmania, very, very successful independent, in the seat of Clark, who has endorsed the candidate there in Franklin, the independent candidate, and whether they can ride up from third position, get some Greens preferences and ride up to second and potentially win there. So these polls are very, very hard to do. So polling can be extremely fraught. But in general, if you I'm going to be talking about the national polls. I think that's actually a bit small. I'm going to try and blow it up a little bit. I found this particular poll quite interesting from Demos AU. Now that showed Labor on 31%, the Coalition on 33%. I don't think I've ever seen the Coalition on under 37% for a long time in a federal election. So that is quite low for them to win off. And that's where I think the potential for the independents, and especially the Teals, have a chance of jumping in a lot of the seats that they probably don't expect big numbers to come in from and win. I'm also seeing these federal polls are showing, this is a federal poll showing One Nation on 9%. Now, I don't believe that 9% is what they're going to register in Victoria, for example. Victoria, but traditionally has been One Nation's lowest votes. Even in their heyday in the late 1990s, they were only getting maybe 3%, 4%. So I'll have to check that, by the way. But I don't think it's going to happen in specific states. So this is why I keep saying with national polls, you've got to take them with a large grain of salt or Lot's wife, and then go down to state by state. So if you go to their state by state breakdowns, which I find a little bit more interesting, national, let's go down to New South Wales. This is where you're seeing a better result, a better indication of what we're going to see tonight in terms of seat-by-seat analysis. So we've got, in New South Wales, this is, again, the change from 2022 is quite large for Labor itself. And now, keeping in mind that the projections are that Labor will win tonight, majority, or potentially drop down to a minority government, they're at 31%. That is extremely low for a party to win government from. So the Liberal Nationals in New South Wales are at 35%. Again, very, very low. The Greens are on 10%. And again, the Greens polling is down by 0.2% in New South Wales. One Nation that's quite a big bump in New South Wales. And New South Wales was always a state where it was kind of touch and go for them in the Senate. So it'll be interesting to see their Senate vote in New South Wales. Then we get to this big section, 15% other. Now, the Teals are quite a big brand in Victoria. I'm not sure about, they've got plenty of seats in New South Wales, but I'm not sure if it'd be interesting to see I've forgotten how much they scored in this poll for independents in Victoria. So we'll just double check that. Independents are at 8%. They've only grown 0.4%. I'm completely shocked by Trumpet of Patriots getting 3% in New South Wales, and that's down 1% from whatever they were called last time. I don't remember what they were called last time, but Trumpet of Patriots is certainly a very interesting name. Family First 1%, Libertarian 1%, Legalised Cannabis Party 1%, and others 1%. Now, these parties, these right-wing parties, apart from, I suppose, Legalised Cannabis, and the independents, they only really have an impact, these 1% only have an impact on election day if they hand out how to vote cards. That's because their voters are really looking for guidance on how to vote. So them being on the ballot paper and not handing out really does hurt the right-wing vote. So they potentially take votes away from the Liberal Party, and there is what we call leakage, which is when some people just go, oh, that name sounds nice, and they'll put a 2 next to them. The clearest indication of this was in 2014 in Paran. I'm going to go back to 2014 Paran because I led the scrutineering for the Greens at that particular election. And what we saw, was it 2014? Possibly 2014, possibly 2018, was that Family First didn't get much of a vote. They did run in that election, but 50% of their second preferences were coming to the Greens. Now, keeping in mind that Family First in their regular how to vote cards always puts the Greens last, but their voters, the people who are voting for Family First, voted for the name Family First, thought, oh, that's a nice name, and then they were voting at about a rate of 50% going second to the Greens. So in effect, them running and taking some votes from the Liberal, well, we presume the Liberal Party, and they basically gave a proportion of that, quite a high proportion, to a progressive party. So that's quite interesting when you look at these parties. They're getting 3, 4, 5, 6, 7%. If they don't hand out on election day, that's 7% of votes that it's going to be very hard to figure out where they go. Even if someone hands out a how to vote card, the proportion of voters that don't follow that how to vote card is quite significant sometimes. So when, for example, in the seats where the Greens get eliminated, what we find is that there is roughly about 80 to 90% of Green voters that will preference the Labour Party before the Liberal Party. They might go to independents before then, but if the Greens don't hand out, it still holds true. Green voters tend to be set in their ways, and they do tend to follow the way they preference, which is progressives first. The Liberal Party not handing out, for example, like this might be in Wills, the seat of Wills, for example, that might be a completely different result. So that's something we want to follow to see whether Liberal Party voters, when they vote without a how to vote card, whether they do in fact put Labour last or whether they put the Greens last. So the Liberal Party how to vote card says put the Greens last, but we don't know whether they will, without a how to vote card, whether a Liberal voter will follow that line. So that's something that we would be really interested in. And Germsekon, who is going to be here with us later today, he's actually scrutineering at one of the booths in Wills, so he can give us some insight into what he saw. And part of the reason why I talk about that is because he reported to me today that there were not many people in the booths that he visited in the electorate of Wills today where the Liberal Party were handing out how to vote cards. So it will be interesting to see where those preferences move. The same as in McNamara, what I saw in the booth that I handed out at today was I think there was only 2 Liberal Party volunteers handing out, and they only handed out for about 30 minutes to 40 minutes, and then they went somewhere else. So I've gotten some reports from around the place where it seems like the Liberal Party volunteers have been called in to defend seats or to try and win those teal seats in Goldstein and Kooyong, which is where we are in the south of Melbourne. And it feels like even in seats like Wills, they've not really sent volunteers there. So we don't quite know how those seats are going to swing. It'll be interesting to see why they didn't hand out at the booth that I was handing out at, which is actually, gets about 500 McNamara voters because it's on the border. So quite interesting to watch those results come in. And for people like me who are election nerds and psephologists who are coming in, we love this stuff. We love monitoring it, and we love figuring out what's going to happen to those votes and projecting, and obviously looking at demographics and finding out if there's a link between specific demographics and the way they vote. So it's not all, there's a whole lot of science behind this, and that is pretty interesting. Please let me know through the channel. I think you can ask questions, etc. If you've noticed anything at polling booths that you were at, whether there were Liberal volunteers handing out, or if you saw, for example, in the electorate of Wills, whether the legalised cannabis party were handing out. Now, they did preference the Labour Party second. They didn't hand out. I don't know what the effect of that's going to be. So it sounds great for the Labour Party to have the legalised cannabis party, who you would think their voters would prefer the Greens, to preference the Labour Party second. But if they didn't hand out how to vote cards, I want to find out where those voters went second. So that's the impact that we're really interested in finding out. And keeping in mind that a lot of voters seem to have pre-polled this election, so they voted before election day. And we saw that today as we were handing out, that there were not many voters coming in. After about 1 p.m, not many voters coming in at all. After about 5 p.m, there was virtually, maybe I counted about 4 people coming in to vote. So that's showing that Electoral Commission getting out there on the front foot and getting people to vote early and getting people to register for postal votes, etc., really, really helped. Now, in terms of, I'm just gonna be talking for a while. In terms of, we'll go back to this poll. This is the New South Wales, obviously. This is a Demos AU poll, and that showed, I can't quite remember how they did their preferences, whether they allocated it according to the last or not. but they're showing that the Labour Party's on 50% and the Liberals are on 50% two-party preferred. Again, that does not actually work in the case of a whole lot of independents running in a very, very exciting election for us this time around. And just about every physiologist I know is excited because this is not just a Labour-Liberal contest. We've seen a huge shift in Australian politics where people are significant parties and minors. This is the Victorian primary vote, Victorian portion of that poll. Let's blow it up a little bit if we can. Oh, okay, cool. So, we're looking at drop for Labor. That's 9% drop. 31% for the Liberal National Coalition. This used to be the jewel in the crown for Victoria. I've got some notes in from John Englert, who is a good friend. In Wills, One Nation had a presence. Okay. Wow, okay, that's quite a surprise. Wills had a One Nation presence, with the Liberal candidate was totally absent. One Nation presence on booths all day. Wow, little Liberal presence. Okay, that's quite. The Liberals not turning up, but One Nation handing out all day. That's completely. That amazes me. Right, and the other thing to mention is that Muslim Votes, which is a pressure group, I suppose, they were handing out in a couple of electorates in Melbourne, in Victoria. We had, and apparently they had some volunteers north of the electorate with preference, second preference options, Vote Greens 1 and 2 Socialist Alliance. That's going to help. Looking at the demographics in Wills, for those who are not in Victoria, north of the northern part of the electorate has a large Muslim population, and certainly not very green friendly in the past. And I think it's really, really changed over this election, and that's pretty. I'm just reading some comments that are coming through. Keep it up. It's really good to see. And yeah, very, very interesting. So let's look at this is a big to me actually. One Nation registering 9%. I highly doubt that, but that's the right. This is the poll, obviously. We're seeing a lot of independence. So that's a. Sorry, I just saw someone comment that it's the first time in 15 years they rocked up and voted. Congratulations, that's fantastic. It's great to see people taking part in elections. And I was talking to around the streets I talked to people who were voting for the first time in decades. So I think, if anything, having these other candidates and this possibility of changing and having a different representative from just Labor or Liberal as the choice has really gotten people to come out and vote. And I think that's a really good thing. They're just turning up and voting. So it's for people's minds, but this is really, really good. Okay, John, if you could let me know whether legalized cannabis, whether they had quite a big presence in Wills, or whether it was just the big booths, etc. That'd be amazing to find out. It's something that we will definitely want to track, whether their preferences are actually sticking, whether people took their how to vote cards and followed it directly, or whether they, obviously, if you are pro. I can't imagine that you would not want to vote for another party who is pro-decriminalisation or legalisation of of cannabis. Looking through the Victoria, let's just finish this off quickly. Trumpet of Patriots at 2%. That's not. I think them texting people constantly is really, really annoyed people. I'm not surprised by that. And then just the minors. But I'm expecting to see Victoria turn out for independence. I'm just getting this feeling that people are. This is really feels like the independence and really getting a lot of media coverage and a lot of excitement around them. That's certainly what I've been seeing, and I'm in between Kooyong and Goldstein. So ghosts there. So and I grew up in Goldstein, and it's quite fascinating. And I handed out and campaigned in Goldstein as a child, and it's amazing to see it's not a Liberal electorate. Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, great. So if we look at the two-party preferred, again, we're not going to be concentrating too much on the two-party preferred because that's being done by every other and Greens versus major parties. But it's when the Greens. But it was a little bit of a surprise for everyone, not just the major parties. So it's quite interesting that Labor is going backwards in Queensland. This is why you've got to take polls, even statewide polls, with a grain of salt, because it's not going to be translating, statewide. North Queensland is going to be very different to South Queensland, and quite different to Brisbane. So it'll be interesting to see the votes for Labor in Brisbane, and even Griffith, to see whether that incumbency factor really, really helped Max Chandler Mather hold on to that seat. Brisbane, this is Queensland. Breakdown of other parties. Actually, if you look at One Nation, one in Queensland, and so they're polling much better in Victoria. So again, I'm not sure that that's gonna pan out today. And independents obviously not polling that well in Queensland. We do have an interesting case in the seat of Dixon, which is where Peter Dutton is at, and where there's a Teal candidate and a Labor candidate spending a lot of money. It'd be interesting to see how that pans out. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. Let's go down to Western Australia. Surprised to see Labor go in polling in Western Australia, since they've had such a big win again in the state election, but 34%, 31% Liberals going further back. And again, the Liberals are battling it out to try and, I can't remember the name of the seat, but there is a Teal seat that they're going to be trying to win back. And there's another seat that seems to be in danger. I will get to Perth, WA soon. One Nation at 11%. It'll be very interesting to see whether these votes actually pan out, because One Nation seems to be on about 9 to 10% across the country. I'm just going to scroll down to, where are we now? It's this is inner metro versus outer metro. That seems correct. That seems about right. A Liberal National Party going backwards. So is Labor in the inner city, and the Greens going up, and One Nation going up. Now, One Nation, it really depends on whether they are they're handing out. If they're handing out, they're probably, it does help when you hand out, when you get given a how to vote card. It reminds people that you're actually standing. And that's one way to get that vote result up, which is probably why I sort of think people always wonder why there's that there's volunteers handing out how to vote cards. It's because it actually helps your vote. It helps people, remind people that you're actually, your party is standing. And it also gives them confidence to vote a particular way. So if, for example, the Liberal Party isn't handing out how to vote cards, it doesn't give their voters confidence in voting voting for them. They probably ended up voting that way, but it doesn't give them confidence. So for minor parties in particular, handing out a how to vote card is going to lift your vote because it just means that you've just reminded people that you're actually standing. Right, so we've got, thanks about the sound dropping out. We're trying to fix it in the, thank you. Was in Kooyong, in Malvern Primary, which is kind of a border booth for Chisholm and Kooyong. So that'd be really interesting. So we had Liberals, Monique Ryan, Labor and Greens how to vote cards, and nothing from Advance Australia or Better Australia. Excuse me. I'd be interested to know about Advance, if anyone's got any information from Advance. What I think is that the Liberal Party found that they didn't have many volunteers. They not only have to target those marginal seats with volunteers, they also have to target what they considered safe seats, which was Goldstein. So suddenly they don't have enough volunteers to staff all those polling booths, which is quite a lot. And so I think what's happened is a lot of that Advance crew, who tend to be aligned with the Liberal Party anyway, to get rid of their Advance paraphernalia and then put on their Liberal T-shirts and hand out for the Liberal Party. So that's my take. That's what I'm seeing in terms of Advance not being really out and about much. So that's quite interesting. If anyone's seen much of Advance, that'd be good to know. I've got Darren saying there's a turn in the socket. Sometimes it's just a bad connection.
I'm just working on it.
Okay, cool. All right. We're just working out on the sound issues. Thank you so much. So, so I am probably going to get rid of the poll and go into having a look at the seat of one. From what we've heard, the Liberal Party pretty early on, and they have sort of not been as concerned the last week. So there might have been a poll or two that showed that it's not. Not quite sure. 0.8% of sorry, no. Three point 4%. One. It's kind of a medium-sized vote, really. But that looks to consider. I'm not sure where that came from. It's held by the Liberals by 3.8%. So again, early days, early results. We're not 100% sure where that's. Let's see there. Is it the mic, Darren? Do you reckon it's the mic, or is it? Okay, cool. All right, so everyone, we're just going to try and fix the sound issue. So we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. Stay with us, and we'll be back in about 5 minutes. Thanks.